Thank you guys for joining us for episode 13 of Black Coffee and Crime. This week on our church announcements, we have a guest and a visitor, so everyone act accordingly and extend your hospitality towards our guest host, which is Brandi Watts this week. Sister Jackie is on sabbatical, so Brandi is going to be substituting for her this week when we talk about Mitrice Richardson and, of course, the things that we find on Al Gore's internet. Continue with church announcements. We do have some noise in the background. The deacons have not changed out the batteries on the smoke detector. Okay, but we're going to have that done before Sunday service so that the pastor can go ahead and, give us a word. Also, we might have some more background noise because I am actually not home. I'm in California on location. So we, family emergency. So there's a house full of people. So please do bear with us. And of course, you can see that Sister Brandi is, traveling on today. In the church announcements, as always, be kind, be respectful to your listeners, fellow listeners, and viewers, and especially us. Obey the commands of your ushers and govern yourselves accordingly. Those are the church announcements. Now, might as well tell you, this show is actually being recorded on Wednesday, the 23rd. And today, on the 23rd of September, the Attorney General in Kentucky announced charges in the Breonna Taylor killing. However, they're not the charges that we want, but they are charges that we pretty much expected. One officer, oh my gosh, what is his name? The one officer who has been charged.
Is it Hanlick? Something like that. Hand something.
Yeah. So basically what has happened is there's only been a single officer charged in this case. And his charges are 3 charges of endangerment, 1 endangerment. And that is simply for Brett Hankinson is his name, is the officer. He's no longer with the Louisville Police Department, but his name is Brett Hankinson. And he has been charged with 3 felony counts of wanton endangerment in the 1st degree. This is a Class D felony, which also a Class D felony is shoplifting. Also a Class D felony in Kentucky, eavesdropping. Also Class D felony.
Time, basically.
Right, opening mail. So basically, he's got 3 counts of wanton endangerment simply for firing bullets into the neighboring apartments. Not for the death of Breonna, not for one of those multiple bullets that hit Breonna. So the drywall and the plaster is worth more than Breonna Taylor's life, is what they said.
Do they even know who actually, whose bullets actually killed her, or do they not? I mean, clearly your boy, prosecutor, he's not gonna tell us much of nothing, so, but do they know exactly who bullets?
I don't think
actually
so.
Killed? They knew whose bullets hit the wall.
Right. I don't know if they're saying whose bullets hit her. I haven't seen that, but of course the police report was like bare bones and didn't even say what happened in the incident that night, and then what was there was redacted. So there's really not much.
So did they do their own investigation? Because I know, like in the George Floyd, they wasn't that an outside investigators that came in to do that? So in this case, did they do their own investigation?
I believe so. And then Cameron also said, Attorney General Cameron also said in his press conference that the FBI would continue their investigation of wrongdoing. And then he backtracked and said any potential wrongdoing. So there's apparently still an FBI investigation going on from the Department of Justice. And as we know, the Department of Justice with Bill Barr there, I don't expect any different result than what we have now. It took Cameron over 6 months, 191 days, and the grand jury to come to a conclusion of 3 counts of 1 endangerment. Yet this woman was killed in her bed. They said she was a drug dealer. They said that her boyfriend, it was his fault because he had a firearm, but it's an open carry state and he was protecting his home, so I don't get that part. And they also said that the Postmaster General confirmed that that was an address where drugs had been received through the mail. The Postmaster General came back and said, no, that's a lie. So basically, they lied about the entire thing, and this woman died as a result. Her significant other was brought up on charges, the charges for the attempted murder of the officers and her murder, as a matter of fact, but those charges were later dropped. I don't know why I always seem to have like an allergy reaction every time I'm on camera. Also, last week, her family received over $12 million in a wrongful death suit against the city of Louisville, which means like if someone has done $12 million worth of damages, then someone should be liable for those damages, not just the city monetarily, but that means that you did something. You did
Well,
something
that just
terribly
means
wrong.
the taxpayers are paying that money. My thing is, did you like put some folks on the investigation to dig deep in the crates for the most minute charge, just to say, oh, well, we charge so and so for stealing paper clips, so we're going to go ahead and indict them. And then he wouldn't even tell the who was on the grand jury.
Right.
He didn't want to do nothing with this anyway. He had no plans to bring this. So they just found the most minute thing that they could do, saying, okay, well, the wall
This is
got
what we have.
shot.
This is what we're able to get them on. And I don't know if most people know this, but a grand jury is only comprised of 9 citizens, and only 6 of those citizens have to agree to indict or not. Most of the evidence, most grand jury cases are closed court. There's no reporters or anything. So you have to be on that jury. And a lawyer or whatever member of law enforcement in order to be in those courtrooms and in those chambers. So you really don't know, what evidence is presented at a grand jury proceedings. But what they're saying is there was only enough evidence in this case to bring forth charges of 3 felony counts of first-degree counts of 1 endangerment, which is a Class D felony. So, and you had to know that something was going down because yesterday they boarded up all the government buildings. Gas stations were closed. They anticipated something going down. There was a countywide curfew. So if you were doing this in preparation, you knew that the charges that you were bringing down were total bullshit, and that something was going to happen. So as of today, the 23rd, I haven't seen anything on the news about any chaos ensuing in Louisville, but
It is. There's chaos right now.
is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's batons and everything. And apparently armed militia are on their way or something.
I mean,
I just looked probably about 15 minutes ago, and they were talking about, I actually saw like the batons out was smacking folks. Folks was pushing back against the police. So
and you
it was peaceful. And all I saw was police officers hitting and stuff. I don't know like which side started what, but it's getting a little rowdy.
It is, and it's gonna get worse before any of this gets better because we waited 6 months for this. And as Black people, we are not surprised about any of this. We are not. We are disappointed, disheartened, but not at all surprised about this. And we won't be surprised when Hankinson gets probation. We won't be surprised when he's able to keep his pension. We won't be surprised when he is hired by another police department. None of this surprises us because this is us. This is what happens to us. So unfortunately, this is continued injustice for Breonna, continued injustice for people like Sandra Bland and Trayvon and Jordan Edwards and Tamir Rice. This is what happens. So watch out for that in the news. Now, another thing that came out this week, and I know you haven't seen this because this is localized to Dallas, Texas. This week, I read a story from the Dallas Morning News about Pastor Rickie Rush of Inspiring Body of Christ. Now, Inspiring Body of Christ is a huge mega church on 50 acres sitting right in the middle of a South Dallas neighborhood of Duncanville. Now, I don't live very far from that. I see it all the time. It's a beautiful building. It's modern. The old church is across the street, which is now used as a school that Pastor Rush was teaching at. And last year, the year before, Pastor Rush, there was some allegations of abuse, sexual and physical abuse by some parishioners. And he was asked to kind of step back for a bit. It died down. Like, you didn't hear anything else about it. But on the Dallas Morning News the other day, an article came out. A huge article. I don't know if you read it, but I will send it to you. But basically, it is alleging that Pastor Rush was sexually abusive to students while he was teaching at Skyline High School in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it. So I read a little. I didn't finish all of it because it was very long.
Yes, very
And I
long.
didn't know I was going to be talking about it, but I did read some of it.
Yes.
It was Eddie Long type situations going on with young girls.
Yes. Boy, if I tell you, if you haven't read that article, please do. If you are a citizen of Dallas County, the surrounding areas, Fort Worth, any place, you've probably seen that, and you definitely know who Pastor Rickie Rush is. Let me tell you, a couple years ago, when they built the new church, some things that I noticed about this that I did not like. I am not a member of that church. If you are a member of that church, I'm not trying to offend you at all, but this is something that I found very strange. The pastor named the streets leading into the church after himself. So you have
not the name of the church or anything like that.
No, the church is called IBOC, Inspiring Body of Christ. It's like Rickie Rush Boulevard or Rush Way or something like that. So I worked with a member of that church, and I passed by it, and I was like, did he really name the church streets after him? Meaning these are actual streets. So you have to petition the city to get this. And I was like, that's arrogant as hell for a pastor to name the streets to the church after himself. And she's like, well, he didn't do that. The church did. But he didn't, even if the church members suggested that, he wouldn't, as a pastor, wouldn't you be humble enough to be like, nah, this church is not mine. It belongs to y'all and it belongs to God. It's not mine. So what I was saying to her, I was like, that's, to me, meaning that he has become bigger than the church.
Yeah.
He is not humble enough. He is no longer a humble servant of yours or God. He is.
Is that surprising at all? With these mega pastors, it's not surprising.
No, not at all.
Not surprising.
Not at all. And in the fashion of a mega church, it's I went to a couple graduations at this church. It's big enough to hold college and high school graduations. Let me tell you that. My niece went through a college graduation ceremony at the church. Their choir room and music room was bigger than the one we had in high school. And this is just a church. We had a whole high school. Yeah, it's to me, it's no longer in the glorification of God. It is in the glorification of man. It is in glorification of one man. Like, this is mine. I did
Who
this.
allegedly is a child molester.
Allegedly. And in this article is about two sisters who were both allegedly abused by Pastor Rush. He had no comment about the article when the writer contacted him, but allegedly both abused while they were students at Skyline High School. And eventually they both stopped speaking to each other. They recently, because one sister basically stopped believing in him, stopped her cycle of abuse with Pastor Rush, her alleged, because I have to keep saying that word. And the other sister, that the behavior continued, so they stopped speaking. One of the things that one of the sisters says, she said that when the abuse started, she didn't say anything, which is the norm of what happens in abusive relationships with authority figures, that you don't say anything. But she says, and I'm paraphrasing, that she didn't want to disappoint him. She didn't want to disappoint him. And she was as much inspired by the man as she was by the Bible. Baby, when I read that line right there, that lets you know, and I don't have anything against religion. I don't have anything against God, but baby, I got something against the church, because a church sometimes is no longer what it's supposed to be. And you worship how you want to worship, but when you worship the man more or as much as you worship the entity, there is a problem, because now you can't separate the two. So what he tells you is now absolute gospel. So you will allow abuse to continue with yourself, with your family, and with your children, and you will turn a blind eye to it because you can no longer separate God from the man. And the lady Donna in the article, she lost her significant other. She lost her son because Pastor Rush was supposedly basically telling her significant other how to have sex with her. And this is in the article. Like giving actual instruction on how to have sex with this woman.
Out of line.
So yes. You just want to I want to throw my phone. Like, what are you doing here? And
we talking about regular stuff or some verse in the Bible. Anything other than that is that's out of line. Unless you bringing me to a verse in the Bible, I don't.
No, he was given detailed, explicit instructions on how to lay between his woman's legs. The man ended up leaving her, of course. Their relationship did not last. Then because the child's father left her, she then basically turned her son over to the pastor to help raise. And he was telling the son, like, that's not your father, I'm now your father. And he was disciplining him to the point of abuse. So much so that the young man had PTSD. And I believe, if he's still in prison, but he did go to prison. I don't know if he's still there now, but he was in prison for armed robbery. So it's a lot in this article. And again, this is from the Dallas Morning News.
Not pleased.
Yes, I will be posting, if I can, I will post a link to that on our Facebook page so you guys can see that. Okay, so So, church announcements. I wonder what they're gonna be talking about on Sunday. I'm gonna have to find a member.
You know how they'll do.
Mm-hmm.
Some people they just worship their pastor.
Yeah,
no matter what the pastor does.
No matter what.
Well, that boy must have done something, or that lady was crazy, and she said it's never the pastor's fault. They always cover the pastor. The pastor is just a man. Pastor is not God. And that's what happens when you don't study for yourself, where you just take a man, a sinner's a word for
Word.
it without checking it against the Bible. If he ain't what he's saying ain't lining up with the Bible, you need to leave that church.
Yeah. But
But
it's
at this point, that's just a building.
right.
It
And
ain't nothing Christian going on in there.
here's another thing about this crazy thing in this article is that one of the things that Rickie Rush, like one can call him Rudy, Rickie Rush says he wrote a book. I forget the name of the book, but it's in the article.
Of course, he wrote a book.
Right. So he wrote a book about his life. And one of the things that he talks about his life is how one thing that really shaped him as a person and, put him on a certain kind of path was the death of his mother. He says that at 10 years old or thereabouts, he witnessed the very violent death of his mother, and that changed and shaped him for the rest of his life. Well, somebody went digging. His mom didn't die violently. His mom died of liver failure at home in her bed.
Wait, because he said that he seen somebody running out and his mom was dead on the ground. He looked over the banister. His mom was laid out, and he saw two men running away with guns or something.
Didn't happen. Didn't happen.
Wow. See, I read enough into the article to see that part.
Didn't
That he
happen.
saw his mom just laid out. His mom told him to go get something, and he
Did
came back
not
and saw
happen.
his mom laid out.
According to the death
Wow.
certificates and police reports and all the medical reports that they could find when they went digging, she died of liver failure in her bed, not of a violent death.
Why would you lie about that, though?
Because
Wow.
I don't know. Why do people lie about anything? But I guess maybe didn't think it was going to be found out, or whatever.
It
But
got
yeah,
dark all of a sudden. Can't see me, huh?
I can see your rap.
Let me see what's going on with my lights.
Now, while you're figuring out your light situation, we're going to move on to the story that we're talking about this week, which is the story of Mitrice Richardson, who was a 24-year-old California woman who was arrested after displaying some very bizarre behavior at a restaurant in Malibu. She was arrested, she was let go, and the sheriff's department is the last confirmed sighting of her. And then she turned up dead 10 months later in an area not too far from the sheriff's department. So I know you said that you really didn't, you kind of had a very peripheral knowledge of what's going on. Okay,
But
so
even the little bit that I saw was foul.
very mysterious. And that's why people are still talking about this. One person that we both know, which is Mike, he posted this on his Facebook page, and I said, you know what, I already have that on my board. We're going to talk about it. And since I'm in California this week, we're going to talk about this California case. So Mitrice is a native of Southern California. She grew up in Covina, California, with her mother and her stepfather. Also stayed with her father and grandmother in Los Angeles. Very outgoing, beautiful girl. She liked to dance. She was in pageants, all of those things. And she was actually, a year before she was arrested, graduated from Cal State Fullerton with a bachelor's degree in psychology. At the time of her disappearance, she was working as a part-time executive assistant and an exotic dancer at a gay club. She was a member of the LGBT community and was in a 2-year-long relationship with a young lady named Teresa Moon. So basically what happens is she may have been bipolar. It doesn't say that she was under any medication, but she would display that type of behavior sporadically. And on September 16th of 2009, she goes to this restaurant in Malibu called Jeffrey's. She shows up, she gets to the valet, she's waiting for the valet, and she gets out of the car, and as the valet comes to get her car, she ends up in his car because his car was open. Which is, everything about the story is weird. So she's in the valet's car, he gets her out, and then she asks for this lady, is Vanessa here? He's like, no, I don't know. And so he takes her car, but he calls the hostess of the restaurant and say, we got a customer here. She's acting a little strange. She's, basically just, yapping away. Just be aware. So she goes in the restaurant and she starts talking to a group of diners. And so she kind of starts sitting with him and talks to them. And she says stuff about Michael Jackson being dead and Michael Jackson waiting for her. But by this time, Michael Jackson was dead for about a month or so in 2009. And in any case, she's kind of going off all over the place. They don't know her. She's kind of going off, but she tries to leave without paying her bill, which was $89. Okay. She tries to leave. Her bill is $89. She tells the manager, hey, they're going to pay for it. But the other diners are like, nah, we didn't agree to that. So, words happen or whatever. And basically, they call the police, the sheriff's department, which is the Lost Hills, Malibu Sheriff Station. So they're sent out to kind of deal with the issue. The diners that she was with they volunteered to pay her bill. But since she was acting so erratically, they didn't feel like it was safe for her to leave and drive her own car. So they were concerned about her well-being because she was acting as if she was under the influence of something, either drugs or alcohol.
But they couldn't take her home, though? They didn't want her driving her own car, but they couldn't take her home?
Right. So that didn't happen. So the manager decided to press charges of what the charge was like, trying to leave without paying the bill or something. Well, the sheriff's department gets there and she's acting erratically, thinks she's under the influence. She does not have her wallet with her. She doesn't have her cell phone, anything like that. She doesn't even have her car keys because she valeted her car. So they give her a field sobriety test. She passes. She's not under the influence of anything, but she's still arrested on the charge of, basically trying to skip out on her bill. They search her car. They find like less than an ounce of marijuana in an open container. They impound the car, even though the car was parked. She was not driving it and she was not under the influence. They still impounded the car. They left her personal items in that car.
Yeah, they said they put her dad said they put her stuff in the trunk and then
Right.
impounded the car.
And then impounded the car. They take her to the sheriff's station, the substation, Lost Hills, and they process her. She gets a phone call. She calls her grandmother, Mildred. Her grandmother basically tells her, they about to arrest your ass. That's what she says. Grandmother says, they gonna arrest your ass. And she doesn't know her mom's number, but the grandmother does call her mom. Her mom's name is Mitrice Sutton. And they call Mitrice, and Mitrice calls the sheriff's department and says, she's in a mental state right now. She's really mentally fragile. When are you going to release her? And they say, not before in the morning. We're going to release her tomorrow morning. And the mom says, okay, that's fine. Maybe she should sleep it off to kind of learn her lesson. And she makes a comment that will come back to definitely haunt her. She makes the comment somewhere along the lines of, I want her to stay there because I don't want to wake up and find out. I don't want to be one of those people who finds out that her daughter's somewhere with her head chopped off. That's paraphrasing. That's her mom said that to the jailers. And then she stays home because she's assured that she'll be there till tomorrow morning and I'm gonna go get her. Well, the next morning comes and the mom calls around 5:35 on the 17th. She's not there. The mom is very concerned. So they're like, hey, you need to talk to the jailer. The jailer's like, no, we let her go. We let her go last night around 12:30. She was arrested somewhere around 7. She was arrested because they took her down there because she was in some sort of state that would make her unsafe to drive and was suspicious behavior. But you let her go at 12 o'clock.
And the the precinct or whatever is not like it's a very populated. I mean, it's like not in the middle of nowhere, but it's not like you just about to walk off into a city street or
No,
busy
it's
street.
a very industrial area. No buses were running at 12:30 at night in this area. It is the Malibu Lost Hills area. Now, I don't know, you've been to Malibu. I've been to Malibu. It's way the hell up there on the PCH, which Pacific Coast Highway. Um, it's, I mean, if you don't live there, you got no business being there, really. So they let her go. No phone, no wallet, no money. They let her walk. And they say that she's an adult. One of the things that they said was she is, and this was from Steve Whitmore, which is the representative in Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. She exhibited no signs of mental illness or intoxication. She was fine. She's an adult. However, there was an email sent from the arresting officer to his superior that described her behavior while they were at Jeffrey's, the restaurant where she was arrested at. And the description of her behavior was that it was erratic, and she, kind of displayed some mental health issues, and that's the reason why they had her there. But yet you let her go.
Mm-mm-mm.
And you let her go with nothing.
In the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night. So she walks somewhere. Now, mind you, I did say that they impounded her car. The impound yard was 22 miles away from the sheriff's station. Jeffrey's, the restaurant, is about 10 miles from the sheriff's station. She doesn't know the area. She has no idea where she's going. So you have this person who is displaying a manic behavior, disoriented, doesn't know where she's at in the middle of the night in the dark, and she starts walking. That was around 12:30. At about 6:30 in the morning, there was a reporter. His name was Bill Smith. I think it was KTLA. He worked for KTLA. And he found her in his yard. Like, he heard someone in his yard around 6:30 in the morning. So he yells out his window, like, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yes, I'm resting." He calls the police, and another person also calls the police as well. They go out to the scene. They look for her. They don't find her. But there was no bolo. There was no be on the lookout. They described this young woman, African-American, bushy afro. So they kind of had to know it was her. But they don't issue a be on the lookout for 6 hours. 6 hours.
Wow.
So from 6:30 in the morning, so you're talking about well into the afternoon now, and they're just now issuing the be on the lookout. By that time, she's gone. They don't know where she is. In the meantime, her mom keeps calling back to the sheriff's department, like, what do I do? You guys let her go. I can't find her. She doesn't know, she doesn't know what to do. So she's like, when can I file a missing persons report? They say at the time, this was standard, 24 to 48 hours, because she's an adult. And they're like, just keep calling back. If you don't hear from her, just keep calling back. But how are you supposed to hear from her? She doesn't have a phone.
You're right.
She doesn't have any money. She doesn't have any ID. She doesn't have anything. But they didn't issue a be on the lookout, nothing, for 6 hours after the 6:30 a.m. appearance or spotting, when they spotted her at that time. So she's gone. It takes 2 days before they start looking for her. Before the sheriff's department starts looking for her. 2 days. When they do start looking for her, they don't use dogs. They do a foot search not from the spot where they saw her, but just from the sheriff's department. So they find a shoe print, a footprint from her tennis shoe. That's all they find. That's all they find. About 10 months later, before we get there, her father, Michael Richardson, he's on top of things. He's like, he wants to talk to the mayor of Malibu. The mayor of Malibu is like, nah, we can't help you. I don't have the power to tell the sheriff's department to do anything, to keep searching. He tries to set up meetings with the mayor. The mayor's like, nah, I ain't got time. He actually had to trick the mayor of Malibu. He was also a real estate agent. He tricks him because he goes up to him face to face and he's like, I need to talk to you about my daughter. And the guy's like, I don't have time. I got this important meeting to get to. I ain't got time to do it. So Michael Richardson calls the real estate office and he acts like he's a football player looking to buy this big piece of property. Well, when the mayor shows up to the property, guess who he sees? Michael Richardson. So he was very embarrassed by the fact that he told this grieving father, I don't have time for this, but I have time to reroute my meeting and cancel a meeting for a real estate, a house viewing. Yeah. So they have, they're searching for her. There are several sightings, people saying that they've seen her from everywhere from Malibu all the way to Las Vegas. Even her father, Michael Richardson, says that he saw someone in Las Vegas fitting her description, and he, by the time he could turn around to get to this person, she was gone. Most of the leads like that they didn't follow up on. There was a lead, another man called a lead in, and they did follow up on that, but it didn't come to anything. 10 months later, the sheriff's department is doing an aerial sweep of this place called Dark Canyon. Dark Canyon was about 5 to 6 miles away from the sheriff's department. It's an area where they do know for like filming porn, I guess. Things goes down in the valley. So there was a lot of that going on there, but they were doing an aerial sweep of the area for like grow farms, which was marijuana farms. And the area where she was found was very dense, which was great for the type of industry that was going on there. And they spotted something, so they get the people on the ground and they go. Supposedly the area was so dense that they had to use machetes to get there, and they do find a skull and then a partially decomposed remains. So they do.
Yeah, I think her dad said that her body had become mummified, but her clothing, her bra was way somewhere else, and her underwear was way somewhere else. And actually, where they found her body was 1.5 miles outside of their initial search.
Right. So it wasn't an area where they had searched, and she had been there for 10 months. 10 months. But here's the thing. This is the controversy. One, and this is brought up a lot. This is the same sheriff's department that in 2006 arrested Mel Gibson for disorderly conduct and driving under the influence. They drove that man from the sheriff's department back to his car. So the question is, why wouldn't you drive her to her car? If you thought that she was well enough and an adult, why wouldn't you let her go back to her car? Why wouldn't you give her a ride back to her car, knowing that she had no personal effects with her because you didn't take it with you?
Yeah.
You're supposed to gather those things, take them with you in a bag, because I've seen it. I've never been arrested, but I've seen it. And you give those personal effects back to the person that you arrested and released. But you took them out of the front of her car and put them in the back of her car and then impounded the car that was parked, that she wasn't even driving. So there was no way that she would have been able to get back to it. And you let her go. So part of the disbelief, or I don't even know if it's disbelief, is because she was a young Black woman who may have been mentally ill and an open lesbian, did her life, like who she was didn't even matter. Like it didn't even warrant any sort of compassion or hospitality towards her to get her to her car, but yet you let someone who was abusive towards a police officer and driving under the influence who drove him back to his car. So a lot of people are still upset because you treated her horribly, and as a result, she's gone, and you didn't find her for 10 months. Let's see here. Her parents did sue the LA County Sheriff's Department for millions, but they've received about $900,000 as a settlement um, from them. One of the things that one of the articles that I read, which was from the LA Magazine, was about the treatment, basically the callousness of the manager from Jeffries. He's like, and I'm paraphrasing because I never like directly quote anybody. I just paraphrase. He basically was saying like, I think I did a good thing. Like it was a weight off his chest. Like, he was glad that he got her out of there. But you're saying that after you know she's dead. He said this months after her disappearance. Like, she's dead and she's disappeared. And you're still like, well, I did a good thing because I got her out of my restaurant. People were so upset by that. There were like death threats going towards the manager and those working at Jeffries because basically you sent that woman to the gallows. It was $89. I get it. That's almost $100.
Did her friends end up paying the bill or no?
Mm-mm. They weren't her friends. They didn't even know her, but they wanted to pay the bill. But then the manager decided to press charges because I don't know if the idea was if they arrest her, at least she'll be safe. She won't drive away. Mm-hmm. If she's under the influence or she's having a manic episode, she'll be safe. She can kind of sleep it off, which is why her mom did not go to the police station that night, because they assured her that she was going to stay the night and wouldn't be released until the morning. And so that was everyone's thought. Like, I don't think that the patrons of that restaurant were thinking, we just want her arrested and out of here, because they were going to pay the bill. Like, just let us pay it and we'll be fine. But if they, maybe if the police take her, she won't harm herself. Mm-hmm. The same thing her mom was thinking. Like, if you guys have her in your custody, she can sleep this off. She'll be fine. She'll wake up in the morning and I'll come get her. But that was not to be. Let's see here. One of the things I wanted to bring up was about, this is something that the manager said. We have a guest here who is refusing to pay her bill. She sounds really crazy. She may be on drugs or something. So that's what they said. That was what they said to get her out of there. She was asked at the site whether or not she was on medication. She said no. She was asked also, had she ever been placed on a 72-hour hold for a psych eval? She said no. But they still felt, the arresting officer still felt, even with those answers, he still felt like something's not quite right, which is the reason why they took her. But then they just let her go. They let her go. One of the things I did find interesting here was that Kamala Harris, who was now on the ticket to be a first female vice president, was the Attorney General of California at the time. And the case came across her desk and she refused to look at it. And then that was in 2014, I believe. And then in 2015, she was urged to take a look. And then she decided there wasn't enough evidence to prove any wrongdoing by the sheriff's department. Also, the current the sheriff at the time was Sheriff Lee Baca. And if you don't know, this sheriff was actually indicted and convicted of corruption a couple of years ago and is currently in prison. Yes. And he also corroborated that there wasn't enough evidence of any wrongdoing by his officers. his deputies at the time, which if the head of your organization is brought up on corruption charges, then that means everyone else in your organization is corrupt. That's what the RICO law is all about. That's how they convicted all of the mafia. That's how they went after mob bosses. That if we can convict the top guy, then that means everyone else under the top guy is also rotten. So I don't know why they're not reviewing cases like this, to go back and look.
Well, you
And I
know
just,
why they're not reviewing cases.
yeah,
Well, this case in particular.
right. And I will say this, and you people can get mad if they want to, because one, she's Black, she's a female, and she was gay. And her parents don't have a lot of money. Her parents aren't celebrities. And just like we just found out with Breonna Taylor, drywall is worth more than a Black life, you know? And they're not going to do anything about it. And I don't understand that how you can tell me what kind of toilet paper I use from a satellite image, and you could not find a whole person within 6 miles of a sheriff station. Cannot make that make sense to me. You can't make it make sense to me that for 6 hours after she was sighted in someone's front yard and the police were called, you didn't find her and you did not issue any sort of search or be on the lookout for 6 additional hours. You didn't look for her for 2 days. And it took you 4 months to do an actual search. They did a preliminary search within about 2 days, but really it took about 4 months after her disappearance for them to actually do a formal sheriff's department look for her.
Horrible.
I just don't understand. We're supposed to be the greatest nation and we're trying to make America great again. But yet we can't find a missing person in Malibu. We can't find where this person went if she was solo. Like this is, I don't get it. People are still upset about this. There was let's see here, in 2019 there was an article by the LAist about the new sheriff trying to like reopen the case, but that never happened. So basically he expressed, this is Sheriff Villanueva, expressed his concern for the family, and I'm reading directly from the article from the LAist. He expressed concern for the Richardson family, but he did not announce a new investigation and did not indicate the case would be reassigned within the department. And that was from 2019. There were an article written on the anniversary of her, when her remains were found. So this is about the email. So they talk about, one of the questions is, why did the department claim Richardson's behavior was perfectly normal when, in fact, an email contradicts the claim? Why was the unedited jail cell video of Richardson's detention never given to the family or its attorneys? So the information that they got on that video was edited. That sounds just like what happened to Sandra Bland.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard for me to watch footage of what happened to Sandra Bland and when they were supposedly administering emergency aid to her. But even that was very suspicious. So that sounds very much like Sandra Bland. On the edited video, this is number 4 in that same article, on the edited video, a deputy is seen leaving the building shortly after Richardson. Did this deputy see or speak to her? And if so, what was the nature of the interaction? So, and then also, why did a deputy tell Richardson's mother that she should delay filing a missing persons report despite her obvious sense of worry. And that is a big question. Like, the arresting officer had concern about her mental state. The patrons had worry about her mental state. Her mother calls and says, you guys need to keep her. She's not altogether well. They assure her she's going to stay. And then you tell her, the mom, when you let her go, nah, you can wait 1 or 2 days, 24 to 48 hours to call. What? And on top of that, by the time the mom was calling at 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, within an hour, she was seen at Bill Smith's house. And he called the police. By the second or third or fourth, fifth, sixth time that the mom called, she's missing. So you knew that there was a call about a young, tall Black woman with an afro in the area. You issue a BOLA within 6 hours, after 6 hours, but you still won't allow the mom to file a missing persons report. That's very suspicious. And my suspicious mind tells me that, just like my suspicious mind tells me in the case of Sandra Bland, that something happened to Mitrice before something happened to her. Now, she was spotted at Bill Smith's house, but I just believe that something, like there was foul play involved. Unfortunately, the remains, they weren't able to determine any sort of foul play by the remains. And the sheriff's department, strangely enough, removed her remains from Dark Canyon when they weren't supposed to. They just basically swept her up and took her bones.
Yeah, they were supposed to wait for the crime scene people to get there. They
They
told
did
them,
not.
do not touch anything, and they swept her body up, put it up into a helicopter, and rolled on out.
Yes. And sometime later, her mom visited the burial site, or the site where she was found, and found finger bones. So they didn't even get all of her. They left some of her remains on the side of that hill. So who's to say that what parts were actually included into the coroner's report of her, because she wasn't complete. They just picked her up and just whatever they could see or find, they just picked her up and just, it's kind of like when you drop a glass on the floor, you pick up the big pieces without, but you don't do a thorough sweep. And they just did that. And they said that because it was getting dark and they didn't want the site to be disturbed. That's why you bring people with lights. That's what the crime scene team is for, is to protect the crime scene and around the crime scene. They may have been able to find evidence of other people being in the area, anything, any evidence, but they swept it away. And it's still a mystery. She was actually included in a People magazine, on a People magazine cover in 2009, of women and girls who had disappeared. So that was, quite some time ago. So we will continue, if we find any evidence going forward about Mitrice Richardson, we will definitely include that in the future. And I'll put any information that I find, I will include that on our Facebook page, along with the link to the article about Pastor Rickie Rush. Now, there was I did have an update on a case that we've done before. Oh. Our very first episode, do you remember talking about Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR driver, and he found that the noose was found in his stall? Well. All Mr. Cheeto and Chief wanting him to apologize and blah, 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 all of that. Well, Mr. Wallace has gotten a blessing not because of this, but just because he's a great person and a great driver, and he probably very well deserves it. Michael Jordan, Hall of Famer Michael Jordan, greatest of all times, is now the principal owner of a NASCAR team. And guess who's going to be his very first driver? Bubba Wallace. So now you have, for the first time in 50 years, the principal, a Black person being the principal owner of a NASCAR team, and then the principal and first driver being a Black guy. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
In today's world where we have very few victories, very few just things for us to celebrate, this is good. So I will probably start watching NASCAR again when this team gets off and up to, off and running. I don't know what the climate is going to be at NASCAR races, but I'll watch it on NBC or Fox or wherever they're posting it at. So that is going to be our very short show this week. Any updates that we have, I will post those to Facebook and Instagram, and our show will actually be on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Black Coffee and Crime. You can always go like, subscribe, and share. See previous episodes that we've done, and they're also found on Instagram and Facebook at our pages, Black Coffee and Crime. So that is our show this week. Thanks to our guest this week who sat in the pulpit, Sister Brandi. So please, bless her palms as you walk out the doors, and we'll see y'all next week. So again, thank you for joining us. Be safe, be blessed, and enjoy that second cup. We'll see you next week.